This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
This is 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
WESN.
Now, this is Talking Point, and I am Sean Michael Small, but I'm not entirely certain of where I am right now, given the fact that I'm not entirely sure. I think perhaps maybe the only other time I have been this upset over nonsense has been the Auditor General situation with then Minister of Finance Colin Umbert, various situations with then Attorney General Reginald Amor, and various situations before him with then Attorney General Faris Alwari. This one, however, might be for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, not necessarily for the nation as a whole, as the entity of the nation, the institution of government, etc., etc. But for the people, you know, it might be one of, or out of all of those scenarios, directly the worst one. Because I'm not sure if I ever, well, no, I take that back. Technically, I have. Those three examples were examples of having seen a certain level of a lack of awareness where you question, is it intentional, or is it because the individual is lacking in some way that then leads to them being unaware of the room, unaware of the sentiments on the ground, unaware of what the people are thinking, unaware of the reality of the situation. Because there have been various situations where, with the last administration, it feels as though they're trying to convince us of a narrative they want us to believe. They don't necessarily always prove to us that they believe that narrative themselves. And that's when you realize, oh, you're trying to be a smart man. You're trying to pull the wool over our eyes, right? Because there's a certain amount of caution with how they frame it, how they package it, how they deliver it, that implies that they do know better. They're just trying to be a smart man or a smart woman. Then, of course, you had situations like with the two former attorney generals where you kind of wonder, did you really try to pass yourself off as junior counsel? Do you really not know what an audit is after being Minister of Finance for something like, what, 8 years? And you wonder, you know, is it that do you just not know basic fundamental topics with regards to your job? How is that possible? Remember, politicians are not dumb. When I call them dumb, I'm wrong. They're not dumb. They're smart. Which means that the excuse of not knowing is less effective. It's less applicable. That said, I have remarked more and more on the mindsets of politicians and how disconnected they seem, and that I find myself with, where I'm not sure if there's any way to really redeem my opinion at this point of the Prime Minister. Because let me take you back to the time with the PNM. We start off hopeful, you know, we're in the pandemic. The pandemic started off reasonable, in my opinion, and people might say, how could you say that? Well, because nobody knew how to deal with COVID-19, right? You just hope that what you did lead to more deaths. And as much as we lament the amount of people that died in TNT due to COVID-19, if you followed some of the examples of nations that dealt with it before us, you would get a better understanding of how bad it could be. And we showed some of those videos here on Talking Point to give people perspective of what was going on outside. Now, the second half, the second 2/3, the second 3/4, or second, third, and fourth 3/4, you could say you didn't like how the government of the day then managed COVID-19. That's fine. But the initial response, I think, you know, the population responded well because they were re-elected. And one of the theories is, if not for COVID-19, the election results might have been different. The PNM might not have even won. Who knows? We don't know, right? So, and I did this for Dr. Heath Rowley, as I did for then Prime Minister leading the partnership, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, way back when. Despite the fact that before they were Prime Minister, they have a track record. Let's see what you do with the top job. We might be surprised. Maybe you did all of this stuff to get the top job. We might not like some of the things you said in that time period, but now that you're rich, you don't need to be that character anymore. Can you put on a prime ministerial hat? And then, of course, we all know what happened post-COVID-19. The excesses that kept getting more and more excessive. The lack of excuses, the inexcusable scenarios that nothing compelled to come into being. The government just decided to do things a certain way that left a lot of commentators, stakeholders, members of the population scratching their heads asking, why? Why are you doing this when it is either bad or looking like complete and utter nonsense? And the commentary on Talking Point, to the point where I was concerned that I was losing objectivity, or at least appearing to lose objectivity, was becoming more and more critical of the then PNM government because, unfortunately, there wasn't that much positive things to say coming down to the end. The last couple of years, it was, what controversy will distract us from the current controversy? That's just, it was a daisy chain of BS, basically. I just didn't expect it to get so far so fast now. Because we started off with everybody winning. And now we have a point where the Prime Minister is doing her best interpretation. A lot of people want to say, oh my gosh, she's like the American president. Well, I would say this, that might be true. I just don't know why she's only doing the bad parts of the American president. Now, maybe you might say there's no good parts. That's fine. Well, we get what we get, right? If you think there are good parts, I don't know if this is what the good parts look like. The Prime Minister has doubled down on her position, apparently. This is one report. Prime Minister has defended the actions of the TTPS in shutting down a protest outside the office of the DPP, warning that attempts to intimidate prosecutorial officials will not be tolerated during the ongoing state of emergency. To stick a pin on that point, she acknowledges that it's a state of emergency. Praise police for a quick response to secure the DPP's office from possible threats. Now, I don't know about you, but I haven't even heard the police technically say that the protests and the people that are central to the protests, not necessarily some yahoo that might want to participate, but the people central to the protests, the main body of the protesters that have been protesting from the beginning. I don't know if any security expert has called them a threat, but the Prime Minister, in her infinite wisdom, and then she goes on to say that the opposition, the PNM, she's accusing them of encouraging hostility towards law enforcement and prosecutors through its public criticism of the SOE and recent police actions. Quote, the PNM's promoting of lawlessness, hatred against law enforcement, racist invective, criminal gang propaganda, and mob intimidation tactics seriously endangers the safety of law-abiding citizens. Now, first of all, I am not aware of a link between the protesters and the PNM. Maybe it exists, but maybe you should provide us with evidence of how it exists before. Because now, all of a sudden, the PNM, they're trying to drive home the fact that, according to the Prime Minister, the PNM is connected to criminal elements. I mean, I don't know about you, but at the very least, have some sort of prepared statement for when people bring up the fact that your Minister of National Defense has certain photographs with certain people of questionable backgrounds. If you want to make an issue about potential linkages of members of a political party with members of the criminal underground. Because here's the thing. Hypocrisy is something that is not new to politics. I see it all the time. Whenever I see a politician make a strongly worded, absolutist statement, when they try to have a strong position on something, but the position is one that I question. Why would you make that position? It seems as though you're doing it because you have an agenda in the moment. And the position could be something like, look at what the opposition did, or look at what this party did, blah, 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 blah. Look at what Patrick Manning did with all these Chinese contractors. The problem is they don't necessarily think long term. They never think long term. That's how we got the current Prime Minister, who was part of the criticism of his predecessor utilizing Chinese contractors to the detriment of local contractors. What did the current Prime Minister do? Utilize Chinese contractors to the point where NH International, in an ironic twist of fate, before the election, was complaining once again about how contracts were being awarded to Chinese firms. You can't make this stuff up. And the Prime Minister went before CARICOM and attempted to be the disappointed adult, attempted to take that position. Look at me, I am the adult in the room. You all are against democracy, I am for democracy. Except, do you know what is one of the most basic plays of any dictator's playbook? Whether it's a communist dictator, whether it's some sort of monastic dictator, do you know what is one of their most basic plays? And this is why censorship laws or lack of free speech laws in the United Kingdom exists, because it was meant to protect the crown. The crown has a certain level of reverence, divine right that you can't necessarily criticize in certain ways. That's why America's free speech laws is not like the freedom of expression laws that we inherited. But do you know what is one of the most basic utterances of a dictator? The protests are evil, the opposition is evil. It's their fault. Congratulations. You spent all that time pretending to be the grown-up to CARICOM. And I don't necessarily disagree with the message. I just disagree now with the fact that you can't pretend to be mature speaking down to CARICOM and then throw a tantrum like a child speaking to your own citizens. Because I don't want to deal with it. It's too hard. It's too hard. I'm only the Prime Minister. What do they expect me to do? Run a whole country? No, I'm here to look pretty, be comfortable, collect a check, which I said the office of the Prime Minister didn't deserve, but only when Dr. Keith Rowley was the Prime Minister was the check not deserved. Now that I'm Prime Minister, I more than deserve it, because I'm never going to roll back things that the PNM did if it's to my benefit. No matter how unethical I called it, no matter how unethical the property tax was, we ain't refunding that. No matter how unethical the Prime Minister's pay raise was, we ain't rolling back that. When UNC win, I win. Everybody else, take your turn, PSA. Take your turn later, not now. We don't have money for that. We have money for me, not for you. Because if you are not capable of understanding the sentiments of the population on this issue, by what right do you have to proclaim that you are the best person to run the country? Because you were voted in. This is the thing. I have said, when I complain about the PNM, I don't then now come and try to find a way to prop up the UNC or change my tune about the PNM. I don't change my tune. I try to point out the good in everybody. In everybody. Throughout the last couple of months, as I'm criticizing the Prime Minister on one thing, I was supporting on other things. Again, including the CARICOM stuff. I did not disagree with her, at least not fully, with regards to CARICOM. I just don't want something domestically now to imply that you were pretending with what you said in CARICOM. That's what it comes across like, because these are the utterances of a dictator. This is what dictators say. Dictators say the opposition is evil and always wrong. How dare you protest, you criminals? No one else has tried to label the protesters as criminals, despite the fact that yes, there's an SOE, and yes, you're not supposed to protest during an SOE. No one else, even the police, as far as I'm aware, have tried to give somewhat of a measured response. Because the initial protest, did they shut it down? No, because they understood, at least then, the position that they were in, and they were willing to exercise more leeway. Now, to the extent that they didn't necessarily have the same amount of leeway in front of the DPP's office, that's subjective. I'm not necessarily going to tell them how to do their job if they want to err on the side of caution. And I acknowledge the fact that the protesters are breaking the law, and they should be prepared to be arrested if they want to carry out this action in order to send this message. But the Prime Minister has decided, I am not just going to ignore you, I am going to vilify you. I'm going to vilify you in ways that cannot be proven, because I don't know how to deal with it, or I don't want to have to deal with it. I don't want to have to be a leader. I don't want to have to put on my big girl pants and actually be the adult in the room. I want to pretend to be the adult in the room, because being an adult is hard. Having responsibilities, especially having responsibilities to more people, to a large population, is hard. It's easier to only have responsibilities to a subset of the population. It's easier to only have to meet their needs. Here's the thing. When you made the promises to the PSA, what did I say? What did I say? I said, while I disliked it, while I hated it, while I disagreed with it, you were voted in, and the voting population, we had both eyes open. We knew that election promise was there. We knew what the implications were. Maybe we all hoped that it wasn't going to be such a naked quid pro quo as it has appeared to be as things have been rolled out. But ironically, we are right in the sense of the government can't even follow through with their own promise. Promises made, promises unkept. What was one of the other things that was an implied promise to the entire population? When UNC wins, everybody wins. So why is it that that mature, open, welcoming stance, we can't even, it's one thing if you started with that on this issue, and then because of events, progressed to where you are, but you were silent for 4 months. As far as I'm aware, someone please, if the Prime Minister did comment on this situation before the last week or two, let me know. I missed it. I missed it. But you go from silent to antagonistic, not prepared to even show any understanding of what it is the population feels on this issue. I guess this is how we practice everybody winning. And then of course, it's a situation that you don't know how to deal with. So, bad politics 101, dictator politics 101. I'm going to point fingers because I don't have any good ideas. Because the capacity to talk to the population, the capacity to help manage the population's expectations, show any kind of leadership in a complex and difficult situation. I have always questioned the capacity of our politicians. I just didn't expect a Prime Minister to give up quite this easily. That is to say, before she even began, she already started finger pointing. And again, let's not be hypocritical. When the Minister of Homeland Security came out and spoke about the situation with regards to immigration in the Ministry of National Security, what did I say? I made it a point to single out the fact that he didn't bother with finger pointing the opposition. He dealt, at least according to the reports, with the issue at hand. The news reports, there was no mention, as far as I'm aware, of the PNM. He dealt with the issue at hand, and I appreciated that. Now, maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I got it wrong. Maybe he was, he had 16 different ways to try to pin it on the PNM. And you could argue that given the time frame that he presented, it was happening on the PNM, you could easily see where you could imply it's their fault. But he didn't go through that, and I appreciated that. So it would be hypocritical of me to not look at the Prime Minister's finger pointing and say it's fine. Because I am sorry, did the PNM select the current commissioner? Did the PNM give the current budget allocation to the TTPS where they had to choose body armor versus body cameras? Did the PNM put those police officers there? Did the PNM call for another SOE? Did the PNM make Joshua Samaru a criminal? Allegedly? Or a suspect? Usually, there'll be certain arguments about demographics, what the PNM does or doesn't do in their constituencies. Notice all of that not being brought up in this case. I wonder why. And I'll leave that there. Tell me, at what point did the PNM cause this shooting to happen? Was it a PNM conspiracy to release the video? Because this is the sad reality. Yes, the same exact situation could have happened under the PNM. Right? Because on some level, a lot of the ingredients in this recipe were not political, except maybe the body camera equation. But the body camera situation was something post-McDonald Jacobs that we were debating and I was getting upset over regardless. And if the roles were reversed, what do you think the UNC would be saying right now? The UNC would be saying exactly the same thing the PNM is saying. Maybe more bombastically because the current opposition leader is not as bombastic as her peers and her predecessor. But they'll more or less be taking the same stance. But it's inconvenient now that they're in government. It's inconvenient now that they make the policy decisions. The opposition is making the policy decisions. So now we have to talk about the undermining of law enforcement. Because heavens forbid people get upset over a police shooting where a man with his hands up gets killed. Heavens, I mean, that is so beyond the pale. How dare you be mad that police officers shot somebody with his hands up, he dies, then provides no good explanation to the matter. No good explanation at all. In fact, all of the explanations and narratives coming from the Ministry of National Securities and their respective law enforcement arms only adds fuel to the fire, whether directly or indirectly. But somehow, it's the people's problem. Youth and the protesters are the only ones upset, and the rest of the population is fine and happy and dandy? Is that what you're trying to sell me? Is that the bridge you want to sell me? The used car you want to sell me right now? The protesters are the people who want to protest. They're not the only people who are upset, who have questions, who are disgusted by how this situation is handled. Some are disgusted at the whole criminal justice system. You know what's not going to help that perception, which at least for now I assume is a mistake. I hope that perception is not proved right. I don't have reason to think that there will be situations to suggest that the entire criminal justice system has a corrupted hand in the events as they unfold. No, I think it's reasonable to think that there are parts that have technically not been involved. We can't lump them in with the rest. In fact, we can't even lump the whole TTPS in with this situation. But instead of trying to figure out a way to prevent people from continuing to wildly speculate and saying, get rid of everything, burn it all down, they're all crooked. No, you're going to double down with the nonsense perspective, angle, defensive arrangements of the commissioner and the minister by basically saying it's all your fault, it's not we fault, because you all don't understand the complexities of our great strategy apparently. No, it's just they don't understand your nonsense. That's what it is. Because I wonder, and this is where again, once again, you have to wonder, to what extent is it really different sides of the same coin? You want to know why? As far as I know, I never spoke to the National Security Council, so this is hearsay, rumor, what have you. Ayla was maintained as commissioner because they didn't want to fire her or not renew her contract, because that would be an admission that she was the wrong choice. They kept renewing her, despite the fact that you're like, how are they renewing her? Well, they don't want to admit that they hired her and they made a mistake. The national security apparatus, the structure at the top, was set up by this government. They can't blame it on the president. They can't blame it on a PNM budget. They can't blame it on pre-existing conditions that they inherited from the past administration. They put the ministers in the portfolios. They reorganized cabinet. There are now 3 ministries of national security: defense, Homeland Security, Justice. Justice didn't even last in its full iteration for not but a few months before they started shuffling things out of that ministry, to the point where you forget there even is a Minister of Justice. And maybe, maybe that was one thing that you should not have gone back to, because, I don't know, Section 34, was it? Why do you want to remind people about that? But whatever. You appointed your people. You appointed your people. And now, it's not that they're doing a bad job. No, that's impossible, because your infinite wisdom is infinite. It has to be that everybody else is wrong. And it's the opposition that's fueling this. It's all the opposition. The same opposition that's incapable. The same opposition that don't have the smarts. The same opposition that's bad and stupid and whatever. No, this is their grand strategy. Maybe the reason why the UNC thinks that it's the PNM's grand strategy is because that's what the UNC did when the roles were reversed, basically. And they are essentially projecting themselves on the PNM in this situation, because that's what the opposition does. But here's the thing. Remember, stick a pin. We're in an SOE. We're in an SOE. PNM is promoting lawlessness. Stick a pin. There are a couple of people who voiced their opinion that made today's papers. Archbishop Jason Gordon. Police-involved incidents are not new. Such cases have occurred over many years. He cautioned that the TTPS must guard against any perception of rogue behavior. Quote, extrajudicial killing is always a litmus test of a society gone rogue, because when the police become part of the gang mentality, we have a problem. I guess Archbishop Jason Gordon is a PNM. All right, okay, sure. Well, here might be somebody who you would say is biased against the Prime Minister. Michaela Pandey criticized the PM for comments, accusing the Prime Minister of responding with contempt instead of addressing citizen concerns, which, again, you could get to the point of being upset with the situation, but you didn't even start off with the addressing citizens' concern part. You couldn't even prove that you would fail before. It's like she assumed she would fail, so she just wanted to go on attack mode, which is not too dissimilar to her predecessor, by the way. And when he did it, we didn't like it. So I'm supposed to just now find excuses? Pandey described the Prime Minister's response as extremely disappointing. Well, here's the thing. She may have a bias against the Prime Minister, but I can't disagree with that statement. Otherwise, I'll be a hypocrite to my own self. Saying calls for national leaders to lower the temperature had instead been met with insults directed at protesters. Yes. When the Prime Minister, Pandey took issue with remarks in which the Prime Minister referred to protesters as grifters, accused some citizens of publicity farming, and dismissed public concerns as victim gimmickry. Well, listen. If you want to say I was publicity farming when I criticized Imbert with regards to the AG situation, criticized Dr. Keith Rowley with regards to the meritless situation, then fine. Be consistent. But if you are happy when people like myself criticize the previous government on those things in a similar manner to what I'm doing now, don't try to come up with some sort of, but when you do it to me, you're a hater. But when you do it to me, you're disingenuous. But when you do it to them, you are the source of truth and a beacon of hope and inspiration. No, that's not how this works. I understand that a lot of people assume that everybody takes sides in politics. This is talking point. We don't take no sides here. You do nonsense, I call you out. It's that simple. You do ultra nonsense, I get upset and then call you out. According to Pandey, such comments were not leadership. Yes, correct, correct. Regardless of whatever biases Michaela Pandey has, at the end of the day, that statement is correct. There has been no display of leadership over this issue, none. And then, which ironically is the reason why it has blown up in the first place. Everything I've said will conform with the assumption that Joshua Samaru and Kaya Seeley did enough to warrant being chased and stopped and potentially arrested and potentially caused a violent confrontation that left Mr. Samaru killed. My arguments and criticisms of the government are not predicated on the complete innocence of Joshua Samaru and Kaya Seeley. I am not saying that they're guilty of anything. I'm saying my arguments, my criticisms will still be fine even if we assume the allegations to be true. They are independent of guilt or innocence. It is all about how this situation was managed. It's all about the lack of leadership. Because when you hire a used car salesman, you get what you pay for. Pandey argued, let's not ignore the setup. She criticized the Prime Minister for questioning where protesters had been during the more than 5,000 murders recorded over the last decade. Again, I didn't see the UNC protests against the gangs. I didn't see the UN, because according to the Prime Minister's statement, she didn't just want protests, she wanted protests against the gangs, and not rhetorically against the gangs, directly, physically, in proximity to against the gangs. I didn't see the UNC do that, but Pandey argued that the many of the same citizens and groups that had consistently spoken about crime over the years through marches, protests, and candlelight vigils, while urging governments to take strong action. She further noted that Prasad Bisesa served as leader of the opposition throughout that period and questioned what sustained anti-crime initiatives or alternative policies had been presented to the country during that time. The answer is none. All we got was stand your ground. Look how well that works out. Tell me, all of you who want an FUL, have you gotten it? Have you gotten it? It's the same commissioner blocking you, right? Now, some of you might have had good reason for him to say no. I'm not saying that 100% of the time he's been playing games, but the one that made the press kind of made him look stupid, to be honest. Promises made, promises unkept. Oh, and again, what else you got? Call an SOE, call an SOE, call an SOE. Well, we see how that's working out, right? Now, again, Farid Ali yesterday made a good point. Penelope Beckles was part of the government. Now, I would argue she was not a central part of the government, so you can't hold her predecessor's actions against her. But she didn't speak out against it. That could be a product of how we allow our politics to be, where essentially each party is operated like a dictatorship. So to what extent did we expect Penelope Beckles to fall on her sword and speak out against the regime that she was a part of, not necessarily having enough strength? Because remember, she did have to take a detour in her political career as an ambassador somewhere or the other. Now, at the end of the day, she did offer a suggestion, a tangible one, not just call an SOE. Because we've called the SOE, but, you know, that's the easy part. The failures of the current administration comes on the, okay, after calling the SOE, then what? Another quote from Michaela Pandey. This is not a choice between supporting the police and defending citizens' rights. Adding that such a narrative was a false choice. Mocking citizens will not make TNT safer. I don't know why you're taking your lead from the Minister of Homeland Security. He's not a politician. You should have known better the person who appointed him to that post, you should have known better with regards to his ability to deal with a situation on this level. It's not just a police issue. As Prime Minister, you should know better. So the question is, why are you not displaying that? Why? Is it that you are incapable, incompetent, or is it purposeful, deliberate, intentional? Hey, you know what? Even a military guy has an interesting take. So this is how it goes. Civilian leadership, their job is to ensure that a lot of the non-paramilitary technical issues supersedes civilian concerns like, you know, individual rights and freedoms and stuff like that. That's what civilian leadership is for. Then you have the people in the police, and they're more to the paramilitary side, right? More about security and safety and law and order and stuff. Then you have the military. The military don't know nothing about individual rights and freedoms and policing and all of that. They're military. That's the big stick that you only take out of the case when you're going to swing. Military traditionally is not the tool of diplomacy. It's not the tool of civil dialogue, right? When you have people in the population upset about something, like say the situation in Flint, Michigan, however many years ago, right? The government today doesn't say, where's the general to go talk to these people that are upset over the water system poisoning them? No. You call the general if you need the final last straw to prevent a bad situation from getting worse in terms of physical confrontation. But that's it. Because military ain't trained to deal with civilians. Military ain't trained to be concerned about civil rights. Military, that's not their job. And yet, here we have in the press, we have the civilian leadership and the police leadership saying all the wrong things to piss off the population, and you have a former Coast Guard commander. He is the voice of reason. He is saying what the civilian leadership is supposed to be saying. Dr. Gavin Hira urged national leaders to empathize first, legislate second, amid growing debate over the government's response to the protests. Hira cautioned against dismissing public demonstrations as mere publicity farming after the Prime Minister criticized those who gathered in Port of Spain on Wednesday. That is not what his background is. In the modern 21st century, military leaders at a certain level are as much diplomats as they are, combat commanders. But traditionally, if the military guy has a better starting point as you, the civilian leadership, something is wrong. This is not technically his background. His expertise, technically, he's supposed to be less of an expert on these things than someone who wins an election to be prime minister. He's supposed to be technically less political savvy than someone who wins an election to be prime minister. Because he didn't spend his career talking to people and trying to meet their needs and trying to understand them and trying to compromise, budgets with regards to all these needs the population has, and we can't meet all, so which ones do we prioritize, which ones that has to go on the back burner, how do we communicate these subtle complexities and unfortunate realities of life? That's not his background. His background is military. His training, military. Yes, he has leadership skills, which can translate, but the fact of the matter is, there is someone in this whole narrative whose background is supposed to technically make them better at this than a military guy. Now, maybe Dr. Hira is showing his worth, his skills. Or maybe the Prime Minister is that disappointing in this issue. Now, I don't know about you, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Is Dr. Gavin Hero a member of the PNM? PNM never gave me any sponsorship, any sweetheart deals, any kickbacks, any job opportunities, nothing. Just by the way. Just by the way. As security professionals across the spectrum, we understand that public trust is the cornerstone of effective governance and, more importantly, law enforcement. When citizens take to the streets, they are sending a signal, and leaders must read that signal carefully and not categorize it. Notice, he is not necessarily saying that you must always listen to the protesters. The protesters are always right. It's open enough where he's saying, use your brain, think it through, assess the situation properly. Be willing to assess the situation and say, maybe we are wrong. Be willing to assess the situation and say, maybe the protesters have a point. Don't just be closed off to that possibility. But he's talking about law enforcement. His background is not law enforcement. Why is it that the guy with the law enforcement background is more militant than the military guy? Now, Dr. Wilfred James has an interesting point. He's saying it may or may not be a publicity stunt. So as far as Kamala is concerned, it is. Now, I have an issue, though, if that is the case. I have a big issue if that's the case. Unless you have evidence that it's a publicity stunt, why are you going to assume off the bat that it's a publicity stunt? Because the problem is this. If the rest of the population doesn't see it the same way you see it, you're going to look like the unreasonable one. If the rest of the population isn't prepared to go as far as you think you need to go, you're going to look like the crazy one. The Prime Minister did come out and speak. Part of her response was to protect her government. In light of what? Protect her government from what? Because now you have to question, or threats against the governments are what? Some random gangster that may or may not make some, rhetorical threats in a phone call in Belmont or rhetorical threats on the street. I mean, if we pay attention to everybody that drunkenly says that they want to harm so-and-so politician, we'll probably be in a state of emergency until the sun stops shining and the earth ends. Protect the government from what? Is it protesters were the threat against the government from the very beginning? And that's why we didn't have Independence Day celebrations, because they didn't want to risk protesters? The second part is that police have their work to do and they will have to enforce the law so long as they don't break the law. Oh. Stick a pin on that. She is signaling that people must do things a certain way. I don't think she wants to get herself twisted up with whether the police are guilty or not. Yes, but her defense is so one-sided. She's basically gotten herself twisted up with whether the police are guilty or not. According to her, the police could do no wrong. So any criticism she gave the TTPS while in opposition makes her a hypocrite. She was lying then. She was lying then because according to her, the police can't do no wrong, given the way how she's framed this situation. Right? It's not to say that she believes the police and she gave us practical, direct, pertinent justification, pertinent to this situation, why she says those statements in connection to this situation. She made blanket statements, as far as I'm aware. Again, I am more than willing to be stand corrected. I have not read everything that is everything, right? The Prime Minister the protesters wanted the Prime Minister to respond. She has responded. No, she hasn't. She responded to the fact that people dared to protest her and her government and her police service. Yeah, it's her police service, I guess. She didn't respond to the protesters' statements. She didn't respond to the protesters' concerns. She didn't respond to the issue at hand. No, she responded to the protesters. The police have a job to do. Let's see how well the police is doing their job. First off, what is the law? As far as I'm aware, you're not supposed to protest in an SOE. Well, if that's the case, if that's the case, where is it? I'm trying to find the newer version of this story. Well, several UNC members held placards on Wednesday calling for the resignation of Alderman Victor Roberts. The group chanted, "Victor must go," and handed over a petition to the Superior Mayor, Dudnaf. I'm going to get the name wrong. Please forgive me. I'm not going to say it. The Superior Mayor. Now, I don't know. Granted, yes, if we want to do things like proportionality and reasonableness, that's fine. Make those arguments. Prime Minister didn't make those arguments. The Prime Minister is basically saying they're breaking the law. We're under SOE. They're breaking the law. They're not supposed to be doing this. How dare they threaten the DPP with their protests? I didn't realize the Prime Minister ascribed to things like words of violence, apparently. But if that's the case, if we're not supposed to break the rules of an SOE, if we're not supposed to protest during an SOE, could someone please tell these UNC people to stop protesting? Anyone? And oh, by the way, if we want to talk about maintaining law and order, and the opposition is promoting lawlessness, the police commissioner brought into force a list of 15 no-protest zones, including DPP's office. Here's the problem. By what authority can he make such a declaration? Because it implies that outside of these 15 zones, you can protest during an SOE. Did anyone? No, am I the only one that is interpreting it that way? I thought the argument, again, someone correct me if I'm wrong, was that during an SOE you're not supposed to protest. So I understand what the commissioner is trying to do. I just don't know if the Prime Minister understands the reality of what's going on. Ironically, I could say in this case, the commissioner is displaying at least more awareness than the Prime Minister. Because the reason why they couldn't protest in advance of the declaration on the same day of the 15 no-protest zones, it wasn't because of the commissioner saying you can't protest in front of the DPP's office that they were denied permission in advance of Wednesday to protest at the DPP's office. It's because, as far as I'm aware, you're not supposed to protest during SOE. So your commissioner of police, who is trying to show some sort of leeway, some sort of grace, some sort of understanding, technically, if what I have been told is correct, is not enforcing the laws under an SOE, whereas you cannot protest. So who's promoting lawlessness in this country? Someone tell me. Now, I'm not saying the commissioner should not have done what he did. I appreciate what he did. I am just saying, if we want to take the Prime Minister's strict interpretation, strict and absolutist narrative, the commissioner of police needs to be careful. He might be breaking the law of an SOE. At the very least, why is it rules for some and not for all? Or because the DPP's office was threatened. Threatened by what? Threatened by signs? Are people being mad at the DPP going to hurt him in some way? This is a guy that stood up to the previous government. I think he'll survive some placards and some chants. And I don't even know what the chants were if the protesters directed any of their demands towards the DPP with regards to him resigning or anything like that. Maybe it's because they demanded that the Prime Minister resign. That's why she's upset. Because there have to be P&M plans if they wanted to resign, because she is the best thing since sliced bread, and anyone that disagrees with that has to be the devil. You see, the thing is, with the P&M, you had similar sentiments, but they were a bit more subtle with it. They were a bit more slick with it, and they knew enough to limit the nonsense. They didn't overplay nonsense. They knew it was nonsense already, and it was going to upset people, and you had to limit how far you went with the nonsense, except the Auditor General thing. That had no limits. That had no limits at all. That was completely shameless, completely shameless. However, this situation, the Prime Minister, she is like, nah, we no limits. I too have no shame. Hold my bear, come, hold my bear. Because if this is all it takes to elicit a response from the Prime Minister like this, if she's going to go to this extent, just because some people are upset over police shooting, heavens forbid if people actually want to protest against the government for government policy that they don't agree with. What would she do then? Let's take a break, and then we'll get to what the opposition leader had to say. I'll say this. You know why it seems like I'm more disappointed in the current government than the previous administration? It's because we were told, don't worry, we're going to be better than them. And at the very least, one would have hoped you would have seen their mistakes and learned from the mistakes of the PNM, of the Dr. Keith Rowley administration. Just don't do that. But what do we get instead? I would argue more of the same, except when you're the second perpetrator who sold us on doing the opposite. Forgive me if it's more upsetting than the originator, right? Now we take the break.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
In this day of stay at home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins Real Estate Agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
Are you driven, ambitious, and ready to earn? WESN, the content capital, is expanding, and we're looking for dynamic media sales executives to join our team. Sell powerful advertising solutions across television, digital, and social media platforms, and help brands tell their story. If you have strong communication skills, a passion for sales, and the drive to succeed, join WESN today. Send your CV to marketing@wsncc.com or WhatsApp 68-61662 and start building your future.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing@wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Welcome back to Talk About on WSND Content Capital, and yes, now we can't protest certain places. Ironically, The Guardian has an interesting point. This legal notice that prevents protests, I believe it's part of the SOE. You can't protest the Parliament, the Red House, the Office of the President, the Office of the Prime Minister, the Diplomatic Center, the Office of the Attorney General, the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Homeland Security, TTPS headquarters, Prison Service headquarters, Defense Force headquarters, the Office of the DPP, the 2 airports, and the Port Authority Port Administration building. Now, some thought could have been put into this for potential security concerns. I'm not entirely sure if the Prime Minister fully understands exactly what those concerns are, but the Guardian had an interesting point. This is a report. This is, however, a departure from statements made by the Prime Minister over the course of successive SOEs. Bisad Bisesa has frequently told Guardian Media that she has not limited free movement during SOEs, even going as far as to say, quote, this is Guardian Media quoting the Prime Minister, people are free to mash up and burn down the place if they want, end quote. Again, it's almost like if they don't think through what they say when they say it. They just say things, and then when they become inconvenient, if ever in the future, we just contradict them freely, because heavens forbid you hold people to what they say. Nah, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. How could you do that? How could you expect people to govern a country when you hold them accountable to things they say? Now, this is the sad part, right? I know I said we'll get to the opposition leader, but hold on. This is the sad part. ASP Owe Russell, forgive me if I mispronounced your first name. He was communicating to the media with regards to the use of riot police and why, to some extent, what the security concerns were, why the police response was what it was, right? And the thing is, you're not saying the protesters are criminals, because then you'll just arrest them and move on, right? But you need to have police presence regardless of how peaceful a protest is, because you can never tell when, despite the best intentions of the organizers, a protest might be hijacked either by emotions in the moment or by bad faith actors. When I say bad faith actors, I don't mean the organizers, I mean third-party people. Now, also, the state cannot take it for granted that every protest is going to be peaceful. It's only proven to be peaceful once the protest is finished and has displayed itself in its operations to be peaceful, right? There's no evidence beforehand that's going to guarantee that a protest is peaceful. There's no bond, right, or security deposit on a protest. And even then, like I said before, the organizers could have a security deposit in theory. If we want to go down that way, you could always have bad faith actors, which will make a protest to some extent uninsurable. I don't understand how, and there's something about the TTPS that's very interesting. The most diplomatic, the most well-reasoned, the most thoughtful people in the police service are the ASPs. I don't know why. It's almost like if once you get promoted from ASP, you lose half your brain. You lose your capacity to speak, or maybe we're just promoting the wrong people. Or maybe it's a generational thing, and the young up-and-coming ASPs are much more capable than their superiors. Oh, wait, the commissioner was promoted from what rank? Well, he was an ASP. He was higher rank than that, I believe. But this is ASP Russell. We understand the tensions, we understand the pain, we understand the hurt. We are asking, as the TTPS, is that allow the process to take place. What we are asking is to allow the process to take place. Because they have a job to do. It's a state of emergency. There was legal permission was not granted to protest. And regardless if it was or was not, they still need to have a police presence on the scene, right? So the mere presence of riot police should not be alarming. Should not be alarming, right? In fact, on some level, it ensures to those who have peaceful, well-meaning intentions that there is someone standing by to ensure that this thing is not going to be allowed to go off the rails, because certain unsupervised protest actions in the past in other parts of the world have gone off the rails. Why is it that an ASP could say these things, but the Prime Minister can't say these things? Even the DCPs understand there are certain things that you have to say, regardless of how obvious they are, regardless of how cliched they are, you still have to say it. Why is it the Prime Minister that can't understand that, you know, as leader of the country? Because the implication of this declaration, of this, let me get the, well, it's in legal notice number 40 of 2026. I don't think it's the full extent, or legal notice 40, 2026 of the emergency power regulations, right? What's the implication? Well, seemingly, as long as we have a state of emergency moving forward, if you want to protest the government at the Red House, you can't. If you want to protest the office of the Prime Minister at the office of the Prime Minister, you can't. If you have a political issue and you want to protest some of the main institutions of power in this country, like the Ministry of Finance, you can't. I wonder if it was a combination of legitimate security concerns and political concerns, because you have things like the airports and the Port Authority building included, right? These are areas you kind of don't want protesters, because it will not necessarily be a security problem, but it will make the situation more complex and more difficult to manage with regards to security. And an airport is just not one of those things you want to, you know, allow extra risk, unnecessary risk. Right, I get that. To what extent is it legit security concerns? Legit security concerns wrapped up with political concerns? Or political concerns with a smokescreen of security concerns? Don't know. Don't know, can't say, don't like the fact that I can't say, because given the way how the politics in this situation has rolled out, it just doesn't look good. It looks ugly as all hell. Because we can't now protest major government ministries that might have nothing to do with this case. That's the thing. The ban is not just against protesting the situation at hand. The ban is now against protesting, as far as I'm aware, anything to do with the Ministry of Finance. We have a mid-year budget review coming up. Who would have thought? How convenient. You know, it's almost like the convenience of we're going to get away with all the unnecessary security. Oh wait, there's a threat against the government. Extra security for the ministers. We need to hold their hands because, you know, they don't feel safe from, allegedly from some of their own financiers, it is said. So what has the opposition leader? This now goes into what the opposition leader says. This is one headline. On the brink of a police state, which, let me make it clear, do I think that we're going in a police state direction, or are we in a police state? No. Are we actively going towards a police state? I don't think so. Are we making steps to make it easier? Yes. Yes, we are. We are making steps that will technically make it easier to enact a police state. Now, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be easy to do so, but we are going in that direction, or to make it easier to go into that direction, right? I don't think that's necessarily the intention. Can't say that it is intentionally, you know, and by year 4 we're a police state. But making it easier to get there. Now, the opposition leader criticized the arrest of commentator Jason De Silva and Alyssa Phillips following the protests, right? Freedom trembles in these times. TNT should never, ever find itself on the brink of becoming a police state. I don't think we're on the brink, but like I said, it's not as though we're going in the opposite direction of police state. She said the arrest sent chills down the spines of every right-thinking person and argued that the police response appeared disproportionate, especially when followed by callous gun talk from an absentee prime minister, which is true. You don't have to like Dr. Keith Rowley. But, as I said, I try to find the positives. And I will always say we should appreciate the former Prime Minister for making himself available at press conferences where he answered the questions of the media. You know that those were free questions that were not vetted beforehand, because quite often he got upset at the questions that the media presented him with. Certain press conferences even went viral at how contentious they were. The point is, they were legitimate, as far as I'm concerned, as far as my interpretation is, legitimate, good faith press conferences. Now, you could say he didn't do as many as you would like. But I said that before the election. I didn't realize to what degree it will almost be prophetic. Because the current Prime Minister, could anyone tell me, now I probably missed it, but I probably missed it because it's so rare. When is the last time the current Prime Minister had a press conference where she took questions from the media? Dr. Keith Rowley even took questions in PNM political rallies which were not vetted. And I know this because I have seen him be put in uncomfortable situations with those questions. And I was actually impressed that the PNM allowed it to happen, right? Now, maybe they limited it moving forward. But the current Prime Minister doesn't even take questions at all political rallies most of the time. A lot of the time, it's her just talking, and then she's gone. And that's how she's governing the country. So when the PNM says absentee Prime Minister, a broken clock at the very least is right twice a day. If you disagree with that statement just because the PNM says it, maybe you need to reconsider your criteria. If you have evidence to suggest that the statement is wrong, and you can make a case that the Prime Minister is not an absentee Prime Minister, not by saying, well, the PNM said it, so it must not be true, but to say, no, it's not true because X, Y, and Z. I have seen this, this, and this. The Prime Minister's done this, and this is the criteria, and this is the logic and the reasoning why I say that her tempo, her presence does not suggest absentee. That's fine. Those are two different things. Make up your mind which one you want to do. But I don't fully agree with the opposition leader, but I think she's speaking to what people are thinking and feeling, regardless of whether or not I agree with it. The arrest sent chills down the spines of every right-thinking person. Now, I said, because of the situation at hand, be prepared to be arrested. I have no problem with this once you understand that and you're willing to deal with the consequences, because your protest will include the defiance of, I don't care if you arrest me, I have something too important to say, and your threat of arrest and threat of arresting me in particular is not important enough to prevent me from carrying out the deliverance of my message. And even if the message is 5 minutes before you arrest me, I'm delivering the message. That is a powerful statement, folks. Is it not? So the arrest didn't necessarily send chill down my spine, but I understand if for a lot of people it did. I understand if for a lot of people it did, I can't blame them, because I, like ASP Russell, hold on, I'm trying to pull back up the page on the quotes. Like ASP Russell, I understand, or at least I try to understand, the tensions, the pain, the hate. And I would have hoped that the Prime Minister would also be having similar considerations at the very least. Now, she might try to come after the fact and say she did have those considerations. Haven't necessarily shown it. Here's a little trick with script writing. Show, don't tell. If you want to, you know, concoct your spin. Especially when followed by callous gun talk from an absentee PM. Well, this is the thing. From the very beginning of the MTD-matic, I had an issue with that kind of talk. That issue went from MTD-matic to the criminal situation. Notice, you all ain't get guns to empty nothing, right? Those who want, if you don't want a gun, you don't have to get a gun. Well, even if you want a gun, apparently, your commissioner ain't giving people a gun. Then she took this gun talk stuff international. She went on tour, a regional tour in the Western Hemisphere. And now she's applying it. First it was the criminals, then it was CARICOM, now it's our own people. Where left is there to go? She has spoken better towards the Venezuelan people than she's spoken to our people, if we want to compare that situation, when she was giving all kind of gun talk to CARICOM, and this situation where she's, I guess, talking down to segments of the population. You don't know what's best for you. How could you know? I mean, I could hear the rhetorical peasant at the end of her statements. Anybody else? No? Nobody else could hear it? And the opposition leader has urged the Prime Minister to, quote, return democracy to its unfettered position contemplated by our Constitution, end quote. I didn't read this part, I just read the news and came to the same conclusion. The opposition leader claimed the government was selectively responding to protests, alleging that demonstrators linked to supporters of the ruling UNC were treated differently, referencing protests in Siparia held on Wednesday by UNC members of the Borough Corporation calling on the resignation of Alderman Victor Roberts, who had crossed the political floor, accused the Prime Minister of turning a blind eye to those demonstrations while condemning others, because I guess only some placards are violent and other placards are justifiable or approved. There's something I could say there, but it will be too inflammatory, so I'm not going to say it. Not that I intend the literal meaning, but rather to point out the ridiculous hypocrisy. But I'm not going to say it because it will be misinterpreted the wrong way. She also argued the Prime Minister's comments could prejudice ongoing legal proceedings. Pesad Bisesa on Wednesday criticized protesters, saying she had no time for victim gimmickry. Quote, direct quote, victim gimmickry. Spoke about that yesterday. This is the opposition leader. Quote, as a senior counsel-in-law, she knows all too well that her statements can be used by attorneys as unnecessary pre-trial publicity, end quote. Prejudice any jury against the defendant. Defense makes that case. Then where does this trial go? I mean, there probably will be someone with the conspiracy theory of, oh, she intended to do that, because she doesn't actually know how to get herself out of the situation. So just try to sweep it under the rug with a mistrial or something of the like. Oh, she further pointed to the 24th of May TTPS media release stating that protests were not expressly prohibited under the SOE regulations. So which one is it? It's against the law to protest based on a declaration you made on the same day of the protest? That's convenient. Or are you not supposed to protest during an SOE? Quote, opposition leader, no country can survive when peaceful citizens are treated like enemies of the state, end quote. Did the protesters have guns, knives, Molotov cocktails, bats, sticks? Did they have pool foam noodles at the very least? Pillows? Stuffed animals to throw at the police? What was the threat? So, come back to where not where I started, but it's very interesting that we are a democracy. Now, first of all, I never necessarily connected this before, and maybe that was wrong of me, but I remember quite a while back, I made a statement that stunned my colleagues on the desk that I thought the PNM was the more democratic of the two parties, because the UNC was being run, and at some point I started calling it as a benevolent dictatorship. Because all of the power was centered around the political leader of the UNC, they were more stable than the PNM. The PNM's instability is because there's some room for individuals to push back against the leader, right? Some room, not a lot, some. At least more than UNC. Look what happened to the dissidents. Out. Cool. Our parties, however, even the more democratic PNM, and again, it's like the veneer of democracy, really. At the end of the day, power is still centered around the political leader. They operate like dictatorships. So first of all, again, Dr. Trolley did try to bypass an internal party vote to set up Stuart Young to be prime minister before being selected as political leader. It's not like we've seen this happen before and things went well when it was done. Just look at the PDP when the political leader was not the head of the executive. How well did that go? Unless you have people that are acting in good faith and have no agenda, it's going to go off the rails. The reason why the systems are set up the way they were was for a reason, to prevent nonsense. When you try to then bypass the system, undermine the system, it's basically a signal nonsense is going to happen. Nonsense is going to happen. Now, the UNC is different. Over time, the cabal was eliminated. Dissidents were eliminated, kind of like a dictatorship, which then makes the prime minister's utterances to CARICOM even all the more ironic and hypocritical. Because her party is not run like a democracy. Let's make it clear, right? The current PNM is fractured, so by default, they are run by a democracy. Now, if they had a choice, a lot of them would love to be political leader and do exactly what Kamala did to her party. Let's not try to, this is not rose-colored glasses here. If they could, they would, just that they can't, so by default. But the point is, the current UNC, it's a dictatorship. Let's remove the benevolent, because now arguments for that kind of weak now. They kind of ring hollow now. The prime minister that wanted to admonish CARICOM about dictatorships, about standing up for democracy, about the freedoms of individual citizens, has just undermined the spirit of the democracy that technically is what empowered her to have the opportunity to say that to CARICOM. That's what these regulations are. Because they're not going to stop, they're not going to be overturned, at least I doubt that was the intention, once this Joshua Samaru Kayasili matter is put to rest, however that may be determined. And let's not forget, the opposition raised this question, and I guess when they initially raised it, we thought it was premature and ridiculous. Are you going to run the country under an SOE? Except what has the government attempted to do? They attempted to, if not have an SOE, have zones of special operations, which is SOE light. Which is interesting because their own Minister of National Defense has gone on the record in Parliament to say an SOE is not a crime plan. And yet the only thing they have with regards to any sort of intentions on crime is an SOE. They literally have nothing else. There is nothing else. They have proposed nothing else. The leader of the opposition, just by saying, why don't we put this in place for the PCA, has proposed just as much, if not more than the government, once you take SOE away. And if that sounds ridiculous, it's because the bar is that low. By default, the opposition leader, anything she says about crime, that is any substantive recommendation, would be having more to say about crime plans than the government, because they've offered us none. The reason why, and again, leadership function, Minister of Homeland Security, you don't give out the plan in detail. But this is not a military operation. You're not Eisenhower arranging for the Allies to storm the beaches of Normandy, and you need to keep it secret from the Axis. This is policing within a civilian population trying to deal with a crime problem. You want help from the population. What do? You try to show people in what ways they can help you. How do you do that? You reveal to them certain things so they know this is your intention without revealing the details of the plan, the mechanisms of the plan, the specific points of the plan that directly affects the criminals. You tell the population your intentions as much as you can and where it's applicable with regards to public cooperation, public engagement, so that they will then know this is what is expected of me. This is what is asked of me. This is how it is thought or expected to work. This is where I should be leading into this direction that you have pointed me towards so that I can help you. But we don't do that. We basically run like a KGB spy service and then wonder, why didn't the civilians show up to help us? How are they supposed to know when to help you? When you ask them to give information, when you see something, say something, all right, that's fine. 1.4 million people saw a video. We saw something, we're saying something now. I don't know why you want to ignore it all of a sudden. We're a democracy. Because the protesters are the criminals, the opposition are the criminals. Now, nobody could protest nothing. What's next? This is not even, we're in May. This is still month 1 of year 2. Month 1 of year 2. We've reached this point already. Here's the twist. Did the PNM go this far? They probably said things about protesters, similar things. But have they gone this far as quickly as this? And when they did anything similar to this, did we appreciate it? Did we say it was fine? Did we say there was nothing to see here? Did we say it was okay? I'm fairly certain we did not. And this is why I understand not wanting to see the population devolve into conflict and antagonism. I understand that from the caller from Marima a couple days ago, when he said we should be silent. The problem is, I don't know if we could trust the country to kind of stay intact until the next election. The rate things are going. You never know when a country has reached the point of failure until it actually reaches the point of failure. So the best you could do is try to ensure that you never really get there. You never go in that direction, because you're not going to see it coming a mile away to know exactly when to stop. It's going to come incrementally. It's going to sneak up on you. And when you finally reach the point where everything is going to collapse, that's when people will, the cliche is, how did we get here? I don't understand. When did things go bad? When did everything go wrong? Oh no. It went wrong because we were silent, because we were tolerant, because we were patient, because we were willing to put up with nonsense, because we didn't necessarily want to risk anything, because we didn't want to invest any effort, because the same people who we dislike and complain about, we wanted them to somehow magically fix the problem. We left them to their own devices, and when we didn't like their decisions, all of a sudden it's a them problem, not an us problem. If a business owner leaves all the employees, you'll figure it out. I select you. Think about it. The business is the business of Trinidad and Tobago. The owners are the people of Trinidad and Tobago. If the owner of a business hires some employees, elects politicians, and tells them, run the business for me, I don't want to have to deal with none of the stress. And then the employees run amok and do nonsense. Whose fault is that? I don't know. Maybe it's the owner that doesn't actually put some clear directives in place, sets clear boundaries, clear expectations of what he wants. I hired you for a job. I expect you to do this job. I don't expect you to just collect a check and do nonsense willy-nilly, whatever random desire you had at the time with my money. That's what a nation is. The business of a nation, it's a business owned by the people. The money of a nation is the money owned by the people. The government of a nation are the employees selected by the owner of the business, the people. And if you want to be silent for most of 5 years and only come up at the board meeting to say, all right, yeah, we'll continue the contract with so and so and so and so and so and so. All right, bye, I'm back being an absentee owner. Now, I don't know about you, but if a private investment was run that way and it went into the ground, well, the ownership only has itself to blame. This is a democracy, right? It seems as though most people in Trinidad and Tobago do not understand what that means. It's not just when it's time for an election, you get to vote, and then you go home, and you don't think about things ever again. Because there's no one consider the fact that you could think about it. I have to worry about my job. I have to worry about my kids. I have to worry about my house. I have to worry about my wife. And you spend all of this effort to build this life in your community, build up your house, get a second property to rent, to get rental income, to get more assets, maybe have a boat, maybe have a fancy car, maybe you set things up to have college funds for your kids, or to have a rainy day fund, or to have a fund money fund so you could go on vacations. You build up this life, you advance your career, you see your kids go to college, etc., etc., etc. You build up all of this thing, except unless you are one of those that invests all of their money abroad, you're building up this life, and if the country falls apart around you, what's going to happen to all of the effort and investment you put into your house, your community, your children's future while they're still here? What's going to happen? All the assets that you accumulated, the cars, the houses, the properties. If the country falls apart around you, it doesn't have to completely collapse for things to be bad, for the value of your property to bottom out, for you to lose everything in some sort of economic collapse, Great Depression, real estate bubble, etc., etc. And that's why you can't wait till every 5 years. We have a money line. Caller, good morning, you're on the air.
So, Michael, good morning.
Morning.
Morning to you and morning to Trinidad and Tobago. Well, what I can say is this, right? Most of the things that the current government is accusing the PNM of doing, they themselves do.
Or did.
The examples are too much. is the same dog and pony show as you just call it, right? So because you put your people in position when you win, now I win, I go put my people in position. You soon selected a contractor who was a tenant renter to build houses. I go in and soon select my own people now to build houses. And so we keep on going. As Bob Marley would say, we trodden on one spot. And at the same time now, what you realize from 2015 to now, food prices have gone up as much as about 30 or 40%. Rent has gone up. The cost of living on the whole has gone up. And minimum wage froze. Last night I was watching a YouTube channel where a young man showed us 5 different income brackets and how people are surviving. And those who are working for minimum wage and those at the bottom, if your salary is, let's say, $4,000 for the month, your expenses are 6 and 7. And at the same time, we are watching these jokers in parliament who are the high earners, who live off of the fat of the land. And they're not trying to make our lives better. Money wasting. Yesterday I was in town. Have you seen a smooth road in Port of Spain?
Honestly, no.
The city is dead. It's dying, it's dead. And instead of the politicians and them trying to uplift it and make this place a better place, if it don't suit me, then I'm against it. If it suits me, I for it. As you would have seen with the marchers. So I want to leave you with though. It's how come since 1962 to now, the framers of the Constitution never put a place where you can and cannot protest. Because it has no fear of reprisal in terms of people coming to do any terrorist act or anything like that. It's what is right. And as much as I told you the morning that I do agree with let the process be silent. Because the police service in need of development, which is the soft skills, which none of them have. They have the training, which is the hard skills, but the development part of it, they don't have. And they might be the ones to incite a riot. You like have a bad dog that they can't control? Yeah. So on that part, that is why I say peace. Let us keep it to our fingers and keep it to ourselves and keep a silent protest, because this thing, Trinidad and Tobago ain't going nowhere. For those who have eyes to see and could see it, Penelope Beckers made the right call last night when she said that the Prime Minister is earning 80,000 plus and me seeing you ain't working for your money. So is it that is it that you want the income but you don't want to do the job? Or you can't do the job? I don't know. But I'm not feeling it. Because the leader is supposed to be the one in front. And you're supposed to be talking to the population. Because as you're playing, you're a mother and you're a woman. You must know the pain when you see a son and a daughter being gunned down. The fact of the matter is not whether she shoot at the police or she didn't shoot at the police. The fact of the matter is that the police could lie and try to get away with it. And it's just plain to see in broad daylight, not even in night, in daylight. Have a good day, Sean. Good weekend, good program as usual.
Thank you, caller.
I'll listen.
Yeah. And again, it wasn't meant to go after, because I understood why Rima wanted things to remain peaceful. But I think as a nation, we don't really understand our responsibility. And I'm not directing this at him or any of the callers, but the collective psyche of our country. Do we really understand what democracy means? It's not just about elections. The will of the people exists in between elections. It's supposed to inform the politicians of what they do. But this is how crazy it is. Member of Parliament for constituency X, Y, or Z is supposed to represent his constituents. Right? Maybe I'm naive and foolish and idealistic. Maybe that's not, I mean, they probably don't do it in the United Kingdom either. Maybe, maybe not. But I thought representatives represent the people that voted for them, not the agenda of the party on a whole. But we have come to accept that MPs have to follow the party line in Parliament, without understanding that when they follow the party line, unless you are saying that the party line is in line with the wishes of your constituency, you need to understand that your constituency is being ignored. They're not representing you. They are not member of Parliament for constituency, they're member of Parliament for government or opposition. We might as well take the constituencies out. Why do they exist? They're just another version of senators. We have a call on the line. Ashraf isn't here, he couldn't make it, he called me at the very last minute, apologies, but he had something to get to, that's why I'm alone today. We have a call on the line? Caller, good morning. Go ahead, caller.
Hello, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, caller, you're on here.
Yeah, good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Yes, I heard some people saying about, protesting silence, and, we have other people calling in and saying, trust the process, right? How could we trust the process? Tell me something. Is Dina Sitahal family trusting the process right now? Is Master Hembel family treating the process right now? We've seen a blatant injustice, and we mustn't raise our voice and we must cower and stay quiet, right? Where in the world, where we ever hear an injustice is corrected without protest and retaliation, right? I sat down yesterday and watched and used the hierarchy of the police service, right? You know what's ironic? 50 years ago, you cannot see that. No local police officer could not reach beyond a sergeant in police service. All them in khaki, right? All the rank over sergeant was colonial, white colonial people from England who they put the things service. You know what that changed? Is the public and the people protest, put them together in position. Now they come and tell you about protest, and then you must protest. All it takes to get the Yankees from the base on here. We march and we protest. Suppose the law was we can't protest to the army base. Or we gotta get them out. Right? Every single thing, carnival, we get carnival. The colonial people come, the band drumming, the band carnival. That's what the Cambule riot is about. Otherwise, we will not enjoy carnival, I think, today. So how could you could have a democracy without protest, boy? But we have to close on parliament, because what parliament is, people have opposing views, right? And we debate, so then if you close on protest, close on parliament, all that. Right? Come on, man. It has some people who agree with that. Well, the people, they want to make protests as if it's an illegal thing, like it's a criminal act. Right? Well, the police say no protest in a peaceful process, and they mustn't shout. Right? And here the hypocrisy. You can have a protest and say Roberts must go, but you can have a protest and say Guevara must go.
There you go.
Right? So you must stand up there like a dummy and then say nothing. That's what protest is about. And the people in authority, they keep missing the ground. The ASP say in the protest, there's only a few people who want to have an outcome the particular way. There's not a few people, the masses and the ground against that. Right? You want groundswell or what? You have a situation where you can manage a few people now and understand the situation and try to think them, or then make sure the pavement clear. Or they come out, keep them, have a peaceful order, and you manage order. You talk about that is all the role, all the feeling, all the basic role of the police, you know, right? Because all this to detect crime and bring people to justice. The detection rate for crime is about 7.something%.
Yeah, something so, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All the feeling, all the rule, all the going over, all the purview, stick to that. All they're supposed to maintain a protest, public safety and so on. It's not to shut down the protest. It's not shut down the protest, right? It's different views. People can be for it, people can be for it. Suppose we had an incident like that. We had an incident where they had some kind of debate in Parliament. It was politically charged. The PLM supporters came out, and then the UNC supporters come out to challenge them. And the police had to maintain law and order to keep it peaceful and make sure no kind of confrontation. But you can't. Their job is not to shut down protests.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's all that, Sean. Take it from me.
Thank you, caller. You know, there was a point that you made that prompted me to think about something else that I should have thought about before. The detection rates. What is the police and the government? Oh my gosh, crime is down, and major crime is down, and we've half the murder rate. We're less than 400 murders a year. Look at what we did. The PLM couldn't do it. Look at what we did. With less crime, the detection rate is lower. Not detection is lower because there's less crime. The rate of detection, that is to say, out of 10 crimes, less crimes, the detection rate per every 10 crimes, every whatever, is lower. We didn't reduce the police service last that I checked relative to the crime reduction, did we? We didn't have the police service. So how is it the rate of detection is less when there's less crimes to investigate? If resources are the problem, if manpower is the problem. Now, granted, I am oversimplifying the situation, right? I am oversimplifying the situation. But again, you don't want to explain nothing to us. Please explain this to me. You have managed to reduce crime by half, but the detection rate is even less than the abysmal rate under the PNM. The detection rate for murder is less than what it was under the PNM. More murderers in terms of frequency, not in terms of total number, obviously. More murderers in terms of frequency. You have a better chance of getting away with it now than you did under the last administration. All I'll say again is, what threat were the protesters, right? Public criticism has been cemented, strengthened, and amplified by the Prime Minister's stance on this matter. Because it didn't start with the shooting. It didn't start with people being upset about the shooting. We've had situations like that before. It started with the messaging from police leadership and national security leadership, and it has been compounded by the Prime Minister's statements. She has further continued to grow the thing that she apparently dislikes and is trying to prevent. That's how a democracy works. You can't force a result that you don't like just because you don't like it. What threat were the protesters to warrant this sort of response? That's why there are people who are upset across social media. If you actually had any sort of on-the-ground awareness, you would know. With that said, your government does not represent you. It hasn't for a long time. You want things to change? We can't just be selecting the same crop of politicians that are part of a pseudo-cartel of governance and politics. We have to be willing to seek out better, to demand better, to select better. Instead of getting a set of substitute teachers and fake wannabe adults that could only copy other successful politicians' homework from other countries at times. We need to try to figure out how to get serious people that are more concerned about putting in the work and less concerned about collecting a check. You know, the very same check that was unethical when the PNM raised the money value of the check. But all of a sudden, ethics is only a one-way street. and we get what we pay for. Thanks to all the callers. We are out of time. Do not miss 10 questions coming up at 10 a.m. with Andy Johnson. I'm Sean Michael Small for Talking Point. Remember, your leaders, Republic, and to each other. Stay safe. Don't forget, it's nice to be nice. We'll see each other next week. Don't miss 10 questions. Goodbye.
WESN